The board game Monopoly is one of the most popular and widely recognized games in the world. However, its origins are often misunderstood or overshadowed by the more commercially successful version attributed to Charles Darrow, who is frequently credited with the game's invention. The true origins of Monopoly trace back to the early 20th century and a woman named Lizzie Magie. Her game, known as the Landlord's Game, was the precursor to what we now know as Monopoly. This analysis goes into the history and development of the Landlord's Game, its underlying principles, and how it eventually evolved into Monopoly. Lizzie Magie and the Landlord's Game. Lizzie Magie, born in 1866, was an American game designer, writer, and feminist. She created the Landlord's Game in 1903 to illustrate the economic principles of Henry George, a political economist who advocated for land value taxation. Magie was an ardent supporter of George's ideas, particularly his belief that land monopolies and the resulting economic inequality were detrimental to society. She intended the Landlord's Game to be an educational tool to demonstrate the negative aspects of land monopolism and the potential benefits of a more equitable economic system. Magie's game had two sets of rules, the monopolist set and the anti-monopolist set. The monopolist set rewarded players for acquiring and monopolizing properties, leading to economic disparities among players. The anti-monopolist set, in contrast, aimed to illustrate how wealth could be distributed more evenly under a system where land values were taxed and the revenue was used for public benefit. Through gameplay, Magie hoped to show the inherent injustices of a monopolistic system and the virtues of Henry George's economic reforms. The evolution of the Landlord's Game. Magie received a patent for the Landlord's Game in 1904. The game featured a square board with properties around the edges, spaces for utilities, railroads, a go-to-jail corner, and various other elements that would later become staples of Monopoly. Players moved around the board, bought and traded properties, and aimed to accumulate wealth. Despite her innovative design and the educational purpose behind the game, the Landlord's Game did not achieve widespread commercial success initially. However, it did gain a following among intellectuals, economic reformers, and academics who were interested in George's principles. The game spread through word of mouth, and homemade copies gradually evolving as players modified the rules and design. Transition to Monopoly. The Landlord's Game eventually reached Charles Darrow, who is often mistakenly credited with inventing Monopoly. In reality, Darrow encountered a version of the game that had been modified and popularized by various individuals and groups. Recognizing its potential, he further refined the design, simplified the rules, and marketed under the name Monopoly. In 1935, Parker Brothers bought the rights to Darrow's version of the game and began mass production. The Parker Brothers initially failed to acknowledge Lizzie Maggie's contributions, but as the game's popularity soared, the company eventually bought the rights to original patent for the Landlord's Game for a mere $500. Maggie's role in the creation of Monopoly was largely obscured in the official narrative promoted by Parker Brothers, which focused on Darrow as the sole inventor. The legacy of Lizzie Magie. Lizzie Maggie's contribution to the development of Monopoly was significant, not only in terms of the game's mechanics, but also its underlying educational message. While Monopoly, as it is commonly played today, focuses on wealth accumulation and property monopolization, Maggie's original intent was to critique these very practices and advocate for a more just economic system. The rediscovery of Maggie's role in the creation of Monopoly has sparked renewed interest in her life and work, highlighting her innovative spirit and commitment to social reform. Her story serves as a reminder of the often overlooked contributions of women and social activists in the history of popular culture and economic thought. The origins of Monopoly are deeply intertwined with Lizzie Maggie's efforts to illustrate and critique the economic inequalities of her time. The Landlord's Game, with its dual set of rules, was a pioneering attempt to use a board game as an educational tool to promote Henry George's ideas. Although her contributions were overshadowed by the commercial success of Charles Darrow's version, Maggie's legacy endures as a testament to the power of games to influence and reflect societal values. Her work laid the foundation for one of the most iconic board games in history, underscoring the importance of recognizing and honoring the true origins and purposes behind such a cultural phenomena.